The Alldus podcast is brought to you by Alldus International, supplying your expert AI and digital transformation staffing needs across the US and Europe. Today, you are listening to our ServiceNow series, where we interview the best and brightest of the industry to share their story, advice, and views on the exciting world of ServiceNow and digital transformation.
Hello everybody, my name is Mark Kelly, Chief Customer Officer at Alldus International. I hope you're doing very, very well today. And I have got the pleasure of chatting with Nicola Attico. Nicola is a blockchain DLT Solution Engineer at the Innovation and Strategy Office. Tell us a little bit about your journey to now into the world of ServiceNow and your most recent role.
Yeah, my journey in ServiceNow started in 2013. When I joined the organization as the first Italian employee. And I was very lucky to be working for the Italian startup of ServiceNow. And my entire career at ServiceNow, and even before that, has been in the pre-sales organization. So I've done a lot of work on customer demos and POC and all of that. Then I covered different roles until very recently in the pre-sales team, EMEA wide, and more recently in January this year, I started a new role, which is not in pre-sales, is in the division and innovation team at ServiceNow, and I'm specifically covering the topic of blockchain and DLT for ServiceNow, which is very exciting.
When we think about Hedera, people that may not know about it, tell us a little bit about what your role involves.
Yeah, you know, when you are speaking about blockchain and DLT in these days, the ecosystem is pretty big, and there are a lot of options in the DLT space. But we found that Hedera was the perfect partnership for ServiceNow in order to start in that area. And yes, Hedera is what people call a public DLT. So it's a distributed ledger network. And differently than other network, which like Ethereum and Bitcoin may be run by anonymous participants, the so-called nodes of the DLT, Hedera is run by a well-recognized organization. So if you have a look to the Hedera site, you will see that there are a number of very big enterprises supporting the Hedera DLT. Each one of them is being part of the governance of the organization and being part of the operation as well, because we are running a node of the network and we are ensuring that the network is stable and robust. And ServiceNow has joined the Hedera Governing Council at the beginning of this year. And we are doing work in implementing the most relevant use case, what we believe are the most relevant use case for ServiceNow nowadays, using the Hedera network.
From a problem definition point of view, if we talk a little bit about that, how do you go about enabling a digital ecosystem within ServiceNow, in search of the capabilities of DLT and the main use cases, because there's quite a few to go at?
Yeah, it's a very vast question, actually, because the blockchain and DLTs, and I will use the two terms almost in the same way. I prefer distributed ledger or DLTs over blockchain, to be honest, because blockchain speak a lot about the chain of block that some ledger have, other ledger doesn't have. So I believe the expression distributed ledger is a lot better in describing what this network actually do. They are, I would say they are infrastructure in the sense that they enable multiple participants to be part of the same business network. And so not only, let's say, managing interaction within their own organization, but also expanding their reach to other organizations as well. And this is something which is becoming more and more important today with the problems we are facing. So think about the pandemics, think about the global warming, think about the supply chain disruptions. All these topics require the coordination of multiple parties and what multiple parties do in a workflows. And there must be also an element of trust between these parties that must be enabled through a network. So this is truly what this kind of technology do. And you see that they are quite relevant to what ServiceNow is doing, because they are basically allowing multiple parties to interact. We like to say that blockchain in themselves enable digital ecosystems, because they allows this supply network, they allows this ESG network to be digital in a way that is something that we didn't add before. Also because everything that happens on a distributed ledger is verifiable, possibly for every party. So if there is let's say a transaction on a supply chain, this is something that is auditable in any moment and can be verified in terms of participants, because you can verify the digital signatures of the participants, and you can verify also the timestamp, because you have the digital timestamp of all the events. And imagine also in sustainability, for example, DLT are very critical. For example, if you imagine what it means to create a carbon offset, which is let's say a representation of a CO2 reduction that has been done by a project in a moment in time. It's very important to have the entire picture of all the participants that have contributed to the creation of this carbon offset, because you know what, you can have frauds, you can have double counting, you can have errors, and a company may be in the situation where they acquire a carbon offset and they are not able to, and maybe this is not valid. So you need a way to verify all these new assets in a way which is trustable by all parties. And this is what DLT are truly about. And there are many use cases that you can empower with DLT, and this kind of representation of use cases is something that we are studying, and we have most likely identified the top 5 use cases which are the most relevant, the one that we want to start with. And actually the opportunities are very very wide, but they must be demonstrated step by step at that stage.
And do any come to mind that maybe for some novices listening in, that they could kind of twig to think, oh yeah, I get that?
Well, to talk about some of the topics which are close to ServiceNow, one use case that we are analyzing is the possibility to use tokens for customer engagement and loyalty. This is a very powerful new technologies that blockchain is enabling, especially non-fungible tokens or NFTs, because these objects allows to represent all the interactions that a user can have with a brand. Like, for example, you acquire a product for a brand, and you can keep a digital twin of that product in your wallet. This is something very interesting, because Once you have these assets, they can become the input for other opportunities and interaction with the customer. So for example, if you own the digital twin of a product, then you can be entitled to join some events. And you can create this continuous relationship with customer where you are basically being part of the moments that matter for them. And you can even imagine NFTs which are not just digital twin of product, but represent some achievement or some project the customer has been engaged with. So for example, if it's being part of some sustainability activity or some charity activity, or maybe just part of a sport event, they can combine this token and acquire additional services. So for example, imagine you are buying a pair of running shoes from a company, and at the same time, you run a marathon and you are able to complete that, and you get a badge or an achievement from the marathon organizer. And with these two tokens, we can go there and redeem an award or a gift or a ticket for a concert or whatever. And you see how these objects are modular and how they act a little bit like Lego blocks to create business models which are very powerful and engaging for customer. So I think this is a very interesting topic where basically ServiceNow can act as the token orchestrator, the token workflow, so to speak, and can combine these capabilities with the other workflows of the organization. It's an example, and of course, tokens are a big topic in blockchain. But there are other which are also very interesting that we are seeing nowadays. For example, the ability to create collaborative organizations with ServiceNow. We have examples of companies which are acting more like a peer-to-peer organization between partners. Imagine freelance. And this freelance can basically be onboarded on a network where there is no actual center, but they are collaborating together. And this is very powerful for organizations that want to start, for example, a consulting service and want to speed up the onboarding of new consultants using a different model. And this model in blockchain has a name, and they are called a distributed organization, or DAO. And it's a long story for blockchain, but these are becoming quite effective also from a business perspective. And we are starting to see examples nowadays that use this model.
I appreciate there's only so much you can talk about in the world that you're doing, but from a strategic long-term point of view with ServiceNow, where do you kind of see this kind of gravitating towards?
I believe that we need to activate the integration with blockchain and DLT at the platform level, because this is the way ServiceNow has been very successful in bringing capabilities across the different application. So this topic of connecting with the blockchain is a pretty important one. And of course, everyone wants to speak about use cases, but this is truly the foundation. Being able to connect the network is the foundation of that. But then I see different business units and customers and partners built on top of this connection. And of course, the world of blockchain is most likely going to be multi-chain, maybe a small number of chains, not the huge number that we see today, but we will have more standardization in that space, and we will need to connect to a small number of networks most likely, and they will be interoperable. And I strongly believe that the use cases which are more important will be somehow related to the problem that are afflicting us today. So ESG, for example, is a space where the utilization of blockchain is starting from day zero in a way. and it will be leading the utilization of this technology most likely in the next 3 to 5 years. So I think we really need to focus on that topic in terms of having a medium-term and long-term strategy with blockchain and DLT. But more and more, I believe topics like tokens and topics like decentralized organization is something that will start to become more common in business sense, because this allows organization also to scale more effectively and to involve the customer base in a way which is new and was not there before. And it's what we require in order to solve problems like global warming, because I believe this kind of problem requires coordination at a level that we are not used to have today. And today it's like we are optimizing at the organization level most of the time. And this problem requires coordination, which is not just for the organization, it's a coordination of the entire system. So we will start to see more and more old style integration, I would say, being replaced by this digital ecosystem. And we want to be part of that. And we believe it's a journey that is starting today, and we will see a ramp up over the next 3 to 5 years, most likely.
I think we can all relate to ESG, and that to me is such an exciting area for us to get to. And what the outcomes from that in the next couple of years, I'm really interested to see. So we had a question from Mike Scudo, who I know you know. Do you think ServiceNow will continue to grow, and why?
Though I'm an employee, I really think yes, in general sense. And I think I've said a few of the reasons why I think ServiceNow will thrive in the next, let's say, in the new world, so to speak. And I really think the reason for that is that the organization, but not just the organization, the entire society today needs the ability to coordinate and needs the ability to create workflows that make sense and allow people to do things. So I really think ServiceNow can be that platform, and I think ServiceNow is playing definitely in that space. So I believe this is one of the main reasons why ServiceNow will continue to grow, and I believe we will see more and more use cases which are not just pure enterprise, but we'll start to see more and more use cases which are society-wide, community-wide in a way. And of course, I believe blockchain will also be a part of that, and a significant one, because the main mission of this technology is to enable this community and the entire society to collaborate in a more effective way. So I'm very positive on that, and I believe we will have a very bright future ahead.
Now, if I put the question back to you, that you can pose a question to our next guest, what question would you like to ask?
Probably I will be curious to understand from your next guest, which areas does he think ServiceNow is not addressing today that should be addressed on the platform. And we are working more and more to break silos in the organization, and not just in the organization, okay, also in the society as a whole. And so I believe there are areas which we are not even imagining today, and use case we are not even imagining today, and that could be very successful on the Now platform over the next few years. So I would like to hear which area you believe we should cover, which are the most important. And of course, they don't have to necessarily relate to what we do today, like IT, customer service, or HR, but can be something completely different. So I would be curious about that.
Great question, Nicola. Great question. You've been listening to the Alldus podcast as part of our ServiceNow series. I'm very, very happy to share that we've been chatting with Nicola Attico. Nicola is a blockchain DLT Solution Engineer, part of the Innovation and Strategy Office at ServiceNow. And he's been giving us a little bit of an overview about his role, some of the interesting things that are happening within it, and some case studies. And also we've been looking at future gazing where ServiceNow could maybe take this long term. We've also been talking a little bit about the opportunity for ServiceNow to grow in the future. And Nicola asked a really interesting question about some of the challenges or limitations that ServiceNow have that they're not addressing. And maybe our next guest will be able to shed a little bit of light on that. Nicola, thank you very much for your time today. And before you go, where can people find out a little bit more from you? Because I do believe you've got a very, very popular podcast out there.
I tend to use a lot LinkedIn in these days. So my LinkedIn page has a lot of link to contents that we are working on and we can disclose to customer and partners. So I would say this is a place where you could go if you want to read a little bit about that.
Brilliant. And how do people listen to your podcast?
They are not really podcasts, but we have content like articles, blog posts, and videos that they can access. And I think they are valuable, and they tend to be very short and describing a specific use case. So hopefully they will be interested in some of them, and they can listen and see them.
Yeah, some of the articles up there are just really, really helpful, just short and succinct, but also adding a lot of value. And they kind of like, you don't necessarily have to be an expert to read them. They're really kind of pointed into just adding significant value to everybody there. And Nicola Attico, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Alldus podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and any Android podcast of choice. You can also head over to our website, www.alldus.com, to listen to more podcasts, view our open roles, and stay up to date with industry news. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for more great episodes coming very soon.